Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
We did not engage in conflict that was out of line with our mission.
Is it disloyalty? Is it treason to oppose the hands of tyranny? Never!
I will never send troops anywhere on a mission of that kind without telling them that if somebody shoots at them, they can darn well shoot back.
I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty! Oh, give me death!
A dark cloud is finally lifting across the world as U.S. military intelligence and their global partners are destroying the deep state criminal power structure that has ruled over our planet for hundreds of years.
We are free with the God-given right, and we shall not yield that right to any power on earth.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point. So come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the slow runners and the slow owners that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the number one listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
Here we go, hour one. And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. We are streaming to you live with our friends at Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com, the number one listener-supported radio network in America, possibly in the world. We highly recommend you go to freedomslips.com and support them. We are also streaming to you live at the very same moment on numerous video platforms, Rockfin and Rumble and Facebook and Twitch and DLive and Twitter and Foxhole and also YouTube. And we're archiving those YouTubes on Odyssey. So it's good to have you all here. The chat room is full. People from San Diego, from Salt Lake City, from Canada. They're all over the place, and that's because we are now the mainstream radio. We are the voice of the revolution, and tuning in here will treat, cure, and prevent the disease of ignorance. All right, let's get started. We have a lot to go over. This is a 2-hour format. We do 1 hour, then we take a break, then we do another hour, and stick with us the whole time. Tell your friends about it. And by the way, please sign up for my free newsletter. Just go to americafreeradio.com or to go to brooksagnew.blog and just click on the Get the Free Newsletter. It comes twice a week on Wednesdays and Sundays. Some goodies in there, and we have some new things that we're going to bring to you relative to financing and relative to we're going to open a new store. I'm not telling you about it just yet. We're spending quite a bit of money to make this thing jazzy and working really well. And we also have a new product that might help if you suffer from mild depression or anxiety. Picked it up while I was in Shasta. We're working on the images and the affiliate relationship right now, but that's in addition to the many great other things that you'll find in our store. All right, let's talk about when we're unconscious. Not that unconscious. I mean when we dream. When we dream, something mysterious happens within our brains, as if you already didn't know this. We experience something similar to being awake, and yet also very different to being awake. And scientists are still trying to figure out exactly what's going on in that in-between state. Those of us that are able to recall our dreams realize that we have experiences in our dreams that we can carry over into our regular lives. Sometimes they're relationships that we resolve. Sometimes they are fears that we overcome. And for me, sometimes it's equipment or programs that I figure out while I'm sleeping. And then when I wake up, I know how to build it, how to put it together, how to make it work. It's just things I can do in my dreams that I can't do when I'm awake. So sometimes I put myself in the in-between state while I'm at the office or while I'm in the lab to try to figure things out. But another clue has been discovered. A new study has been found that one crucial feature of what scientists now call consciousness. I don't mean consciousness like you hear at the conferences and read in books and, hear on podcasts. I mean that the scientific quantified consciousness, because when it comes to science, if we can't measure it, it doesn't exist. And this happens to be the ability to be aware of sounds or to identify them. This is unique to humans. This actually gets switched off while we're asleep. We're not like animals that can hear what's going on around us and decide while we're sleeping whether or not we're going to pay attention to it. Anyway, it can help us figure out how our brains dream. Mapping the brains of living people with instruments like an MRI or like an infrared scanner or something like that, an imaging system. While both awake and asleep, it is not easy, but it can be done. A few of us would want electrodes implanted in our skulls during our day-to-day activities, but here the team took advantage of medical research being carried out on epilepsy patients. I've gone in to the hospital and had them put the it's kind of a helmet that they put on. It's covered in electrodes, and has a big bundle of cables coming off the side, so they can kind of map your head. And they did it as a preventative measure, but what these kinds of things find are aneurysms and, blood clots and things like that in your head. And it uses a variety of frequencies and receiving methods to map the physical brain while you're sleeping, while you're awake. Anyway, the patients volunteered to help examine the brain's response to auditory stimulation in wakefulness versus sleep. So, like, what did you hear? And did your brain respond to it or not? The electrodes enabled the researchers to see the differences in the response of the cerebral cortex, this is the front portion of the brain, when patients were in different stages of sleep compared to when they were awake, right down to individual neurons. That there's enough electrodes in this thing that it can map in 3D. So, for the purposes of the study, the researchers played a variety of sounds through speakers at the bedside of the volunteers. Data on over 700 neurons, about 50 per patient, were collected across the course of 8 years. This is a lengthy study. A lot of money was poured into this, and it wasn't, I would say, something that just started and finished. These kinds of studies were going on back in the mid-'60s. There was a lot of money poured in this, primarily with kids. I was in such a study at Long Beach State College in Long Beach, California, and I think it was 65, 66, something like that. I remember the cars. And, they studied us. They got grant money, and these departments studied us and, tested our ESP ability and all that kind of stuff. There was a lot of money poured into it. So it wasn't done while I was sleeping, but it was done while I was awake. So anyway, while the brain's response to sound remained largely switched on during sleep, there was a rise in the level of what's called alpha-beta waves associated with attention and expectation. It seems incoming sounds are being analyzed, but they're not being passed into the consciousness. So the subconscious mind is processing these things, but it's not sharing it with the conscious mind. There's a disconnect there. There's insulation there. And this actually goes against previous thinking, that during sleep, sound-related signals quickly decay in the brain. In fact, they stay stronger and richer than we thought. It's just that there's one significant difference in the way they're processed while we're snoozing. On the weekends anyway, I play music very softly while I sleep. I call it space music, but it could be deep meditation music, or it could be music that's suitable for sleep. And I do find that my free dreaming, that is to say, when I'm not taking control of my dreams and say, how do I build this? How do I program this? And my free dreaming is influenced, whether I'm flying or swimming or whether I'm facing, some kind of traumatic situation. Most of the time, it is influenced by the music that I'm listening to. I can tell. So the strength of the brain response during sleep was similar to the response observed during wakefulness in all but one specific feature, where a dramatic difference was actually measured, it was actually recorded. The level of activity of these alpha-beta waves was significant. These alpha-beta waves, and by the way, this is between 10 and about 28 to 30 hertz cycles per second, so it's really, really low, like below really where you can hear. Most people can hear down to about 20 cycles when they're young, but that low frequency listening or ability to hear goes away at a very young age. Things like, loud bass music or gunshots or backfires or generally loud music can affect the ability to hear these really low frequencies, and of course very high frequencies. But we sense that a lot earlier because it affects the way we hear people speak. S's and enunciation in the words, the finer points of enunciation of words is kind of lost. And by the time we're 40 years old, we find ourselves going, huh? But, of course, kids do that anyway because they're not paying attention. But these very low frequencies are difficult to pick up. So, these alpha beta waves help our minds work out which sounds are important and need to be listened to. So a similar sort of upward shift in alpha beta wave patterns has previously been observed in patients that are drugged, not completely knocked out, but, like where they're functionally dead, where you have to artificially breathe for them, but somewhere in between, like when they put you under for, oral surgery or something. It hasn't been seen in people sleeping. I guess because of instrumentation, but the instrumentation is much better now. The researchers describe it as one way of grasping the fascinating enigma of how the conscious brain differs from the unconscious brain. This also gives scientists a quantitative and reliable method of measuring if someone really is unconscious or not during hospital operations, in comatose individuals, and when checking for signs of dementia, and so on, like, with the president. Our findings have wide implications beyond this specific experiment. In future research, we intend to further explore the mechanisms responsible for this difference. Now, with training, what you can learn to do, and if you attend one of my classes in manifestation, we teach you the basics of being able to connect your subconscious mind with your conscious mind. Now, I don't mean blanking out your mind. Like in meditation, sometimes they teach you to blank out your mind. Don't think about anything. Concentrate on your breathing only, or your feet, or your abdomen, or whatever. And that's effective for what that meditation does, but that's not what I'm trying to accomplish when I'm connecting the subconscious mind to the conscious mind. Everybody agrees that the subconscious mind is capable of noticing, beholding, thinking about, moving at very, very fast speeds compared to the conscious mind. It is, I think, many times faster than the speed of light. We can comprehend and contemplate time. We can go over past events and reflect on them. But the more we involve our subconscious mind in this activity, the better it works. I don't mean, going to sleep or drugging yourself or anything like that, because we want the conscious mind to benefit from this connection. We want to try to remember the future. We don't want to just go to the future and then say, well, what was it like? Well, I don't know. I was asleep. No, what we want to do is we want to sort of like, I don't know if you've ever done hooking before. When we were kids and used to skateboard, we used to hook on vehicles as they would pass by. We'd jump on the skateboard, duck down really low, grab a hold of the bumper, and let the car pull us up to 10 or 15 miles an hour, which is crazy fast on a skateboard. It's enough to get your brains knocked out if the car decides to make a turn, hit the brakes, or you hit a rock or something and go tumbling. But it's called hooking. And this is a similar activity that we're going to try to do in the class with the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is moving up to 25 times faster than the conscious mind. It can see things, hear things, and consider things that the conscious mind cannot, unless it's trained. If your conscious mind is trained to operate at subconscious speeds or with subconscious abilities, then you begin to see the other reality, the other world around us, the fifth dimensional world. A lot of my friends have classes, Maureen St. Germain, Emily Harrison, they all talk about, Akashic experiences and 5D capabilities. 5-dimensional capabilities. From a scientific point of view, the fifth dimension is represented in abstract art, or cubism, if you want to consider that. It is where all sides are seen at the same time. So if you're looking at, for instance, a field of sheep, you're looking at one side of the sheep. You don't get to see the other side of the sheep because this is the third dimension. So you get lighting perspectives in the third dimension. You don't get that in the fifth dimension. You can see all sides at the same time, including time. So this is a little confusing to the third dimensional mind, what we consider the conscious mind. So we don't often notice it. We don't often pay attention to it. We tune it out. Oh, it's there, though. It really is there. The fifth dimension is there around us. So when you tune in the fifth dimension, you begin to see and hear all sides at the same time. It is like looking at abstract art for the first time. You go, what the hell is this? I don't even like this. Why are both eyes on the same side of the face? Well, this is what I'm trying to explain to you. Around us is existing all the energy that is within our proximity. We don't sense it all because we only see a little bit with our eyes, hear a little bit with our ears. We can pick up a whole bunch of stuff with our nose and mouth, and we cook accordingly and taste accordingly. And our skin, of course, picks up everything in the infrared wavelength pretty well. But the rest of the universe we are not privy to with the senses of the physical body. We have to use the senses that the spirit body or the energy body has that function. And you access that through the subconscious mind. And then you can pick up more information from your surroundings. Whether you're at work or whether you're operating a piece of equipment or whether you're interacting with another human being, you can pick up these things and you can benefit from them and use this information to negotiate your situation. I'm just saying it is possible to do, and now we're learning how to measure this in this alpha beta wave area. Keep in mind, though, it's very quick, it's very fast, and it's at a different frequency. So you're not going to be able to pick up the pieces like, say, somebody speaking to you. It's going to come all at you all at once like a thought. Then you're going to have to sit down and write about it, slow it down to the speed of your hand and put it down in your journal. But it can be done. It can be done. And we'll cover that in much more detail as we go forward. All right, let's talk a little bit about, can we talk about this subject with YouTube with us? I don't know. I'm going to take a gamble that YouTube is going to leave this up for a little while anyway. We have a lot of people listening on YouTube, and we value our YouTube followers so much. Of course, you should know that Google, and thus YouTube, violates our constitutional civil rights here on a regular basis, as they do most of my friends. And so, we have a tendency to cut them off so that they are not afforded that catch up. Not that kind of hooking. Hooking the clean way. Grabbing onto a car and letting it take you up to speeds that you don't feel like pedaling or pushing to reach. It's dangerous, but hey, we live for danger, right? All right, this subject is about Palestine. It hasn't been in the news much lately, not like in years past, but it is key to peace, obviously, in the Middle East, and I want to bring it up and I want to discuss it. And it's not been maybe a decade since I really had this debate, but it's about time to refresh this conversation. So I'm going to do it. I think maybe because I'm doing it, you're going to hear more about it in the coming days, and then you're going to remember this conversation tonight and go, hey, wow, we talked about that on America Free Radio. So from time to time, we hear the term, Palestinians or the Palestinian Liberation Army, or the occupation, right? You hear those words. And you got to remember that these are terms that were created by the global media empire. They don't really exist in the real world. I have a very diverse company experience over the years. I had a board with one of my old companies. I had a brilliant market analyst, and his name was Mahmoud, who migrated to America from Jerusalem, and he became a naturalized U.S. citizen. And he was not Jewish. He was a descendant from the people who live in Palestine. And yes, that's what I said. I do not agree that there is a Palestinian people. There are small tribes who were thrown out of Jordan after World War II into the region of Palestine that is unincorporated as a country. And to this very day, there is no organized government of this region. Hamas is a political faction that consumes all the grant money and taxes that the regions attract or generate. They are effectively a junkyard dog for Iran, who wants to keep Israel from expanding. And the late Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir once made a bold political statement for which she was pilloried. That's what happens when someone speaks the truth in the face of shameless lies in the world today. And what she said is she agrees with what I have been saying for about 20 years. She said this: there is no such thing as a Palestinian people. Muslim propagandists ever since have ridiculed and derided her comment. They charged her with racism. The region of the Levant or Palestine is not the home of any race of people. The people who live there are primarily a nomadic tribe of gypsies who historically never produced anything. They were gamblers, they were smugglers, they were thieves who have been booted from every country they have ever lived in going back to before biblical times. Nevertheless, the global media empire accused Golda of historical revisionism. They accused her of being out of touch with reality and of being in denial. She and I are absolutely right. And others who agree with us are just as correct. We are hardly the only people making such a claim. In moments of candor, many Muslim and Arab leaders have admitted we are correct, that there is no distinct Palestinian cultural or national identity. Even my former board member, in all his brilliance, admitted the same thing. Time does not change the facts. Way back on March 31st, 1977, the Dutch newspaper, which is called Trouw, published an interview with the Palestinian Liberation Organization Executive Committee member. His name was Zahir Muhsen. And here's what he said. And this is from his words. I quote, "The Palestinian people does not exist. The creation of a Palestinian state is only a means for continuing our struggle against the state of Israel for our Arab unity. In reality, today, there is no difference between Jordanians, Palestinians, Syrians, Lebanese. Only for political and tactical reasons do we speak today about the existence of a Palestinian people, since Arab national interests demand that we posit the existence of a distinct Palestinian people to oppose Zionism. For tactical reasons, Jordan, which is a sovereign state with defined borders, cannot raise claims to Haifa and Jaffa, while as a Palestinian, I can undoubtedly demand Haifa and Jaffa, Beersheba, and Jerusalem. However, the moment we reclaim our right to all Palestine, We will not wait even a minute to unite Palestine and Jordan. That's pretty clear, isn't it? What he said? It's even more specific than Golda Meir's statement. It reaffirms what I have said on the subject, and it is hardly the only such statement of its kind. Now, you remember an individual named Yasser Arafat, right? Yasser Arafat himself made a very definitive and unequivocal statement along these lines as late as 1993. It demonstrates conclusively that the Palestinian nationhood argument is the real strategic deception, one geared to set up the destruction of Israel. That's its goal. In fact, on the same day Arafat signed the Declaration of Principles on the White House lawn in 1993, he explained his actions on Jordanian TV. And here's what he said. This is the day he signed the agreement. Since we cannot defeat Israel in war, we do this in stages. We take any and every territory that we can of Palestine and establish a sovereignty there. And we use it as a springboard to take more. When the time comes, we can get the Arab nations to join us for the final blow against Israel. Close quote. That sounds like a diplomat, doesn't it? Not. No matter how many people convince themselves the aspirations for Palestinian statehood are genuine and the key to peace in the Middle East, they're still deceiving themselves. Yasser invented the nationhood out of whole cloth. He squatted the name. He took every advantage and made himself rich and powerful on that name. The media empire loved the sight of his khimar, which is reportedly folded to form a map of Palestine without Israel. I've said it before and I will say it again. In the history of the world, Palestine has never existed as a nation, ever. The region known as Palestine was ruled alternately by Rome, by Islamic and Christian crusaders, by the Ottoman Empire, and briefly by the British after World War I. The British agreed to restore at least part of the land to the Jewish people as their ancestral homeland. It was never ever ruled by Arabs as a separate nation. Why now has it become such a critical priority? And the answer is because of a massive deception campaign and relentless terrorism that has lasted over 40 years. Golda Meir was right. Her statement is validated by the truth of history and by the candid but not widely circulated pronouncements of Yasser Arafat and, of course, his lieutenants, those that have survived him. And every time a Hamas leader declares he is the leader, he is dispatched. But Israel and the West must not surrender to terrorism by granting the killers just what they want: a public relations triumph and a strategic victory. It is not too late to say no to terrorism. It is not too late to say no to another Arab terror state. It is not too late to tell the truth about Palestine. Truth does not change. Truth is truth. If something were true 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, it is still true today. And the truth is that only 30 or 40 years ago, there was very little confusion on this issue of Palestine. So, because I have brought this up tonight, you're going to hear more about it in the news tomorrow and the coming days. It is not something that fits the current narrative, but it is a deception. It is a sidetrack, which is what American administrations use when they're not having a good day. They do it all the time. They do it during presidential debates. If you recall, who was the Fox anchor who brought up something about birth control in the presidential debates of 2012. Was that crazy? That was crazy, wasn't it, to see that happen? Like, nobody was ready for that at all. Like, even McConnell brought it up. Why in the world are you bringing? Newt Gingrich brought it up. Why are you even speaking about this? This doesn't make any sense at all. Anyway, it's a distraction. So I'm bringing it up so that you are ready for it when it hits the news and whatever theme song they have composed for it. All right, tonight we have a title that has gone out there to all the social media, including Truth Social, about a weapon of mass destruction being stopped at the southern border. And it is true. It is true. This one is an anti-personnel weapon of the most heinous nature. Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals have been working tirelessly, and I think you figured that out by now. It's only been 16 or 17 months, but I think you got it now. You figured it out. They've been working tirelessly to destroy America. That's a great opening statement, and it is true as truth can be. The very first effort was to stop the construction of the border wall so that soldiers and weapons could make their way into our country unfettered. Soldiers from 109 countries streamed into our cities and currently make up a force larger than any force America has ever faced before. Many of these soldiers have battle experience, but they are all motivated to accomplish one thing. They want to destroy this country. Some want this out of a jealous rage that may be fueled by generations of poverty, which makes them wish that poverty upon all the peoples of the world. Some are doing it for money. Some of them are armed for the purpose they serve. Some bring weapons so deadly and so terrible, it numbs the mind to think about it. Border Patrol agents, a couple of days ago, seized 250 pounds of fentanyl, which is enough to kill every living soul on the west coast of the United States. U.S. Customs and Border Protection announced this a couple of days ago. The border agents confiscated these deadly drugs after pulling over a U.S. citizen driving a 2015 black GMC truck near Campo, California, where a drug-sniffing dog found multiple packages of fentanyl hidden in the car's spare tire and its gas tank, according to Border Patrol. Now, the Drug Enforcement Agency has a metric. They know how deadly this is. 1 kilogram, that's 2.5 pounds, 2.25 pounds actually. 2.25 pounds of fentanyl has the potential to kill 500,000 people. Yeah, if you breathe it, you're dead. If you swallow it, you're dead. If you touch it with your skin, you're dead. This particular seizure contained over 56 million doses. One seizure, and I guarantee there are some that got through. The seizure has an estimated street value of $3,679,000. Whoever was driving that pickup was looking for one hell of a payday. You can rest assured, Earth Explorers, that 2 or 3 or 10 more shipments drove across our border without ever being detected. Oh yeah. Guarantee you people take the risk for a $3 or $4 million payday. By the way, the population of California, Oregon, and Washington combined is about 51 million. and that's according to the 2021 census. Border Patrol has confiscated over 8,400 pounds of fentanyl so far just this year. It's just July. It's just July. You get that? You understand how deadly this is? The cops that discover these often die because they don't have the correct personal protective equipment to prevent being exposed as they dig this out of the vehicle. By the way, that's enough to kill all these people in all these states 10 times over. All someone had to do was dump it in the water supply or sprinkle it on the racks of clothing at a store or rub it onto cash and then mail the money around to people. Congratulations, you've just won $20 in free money. Go spend it. You're dead. Everyone who touches that money would be dead. Yeah. Well, U.S. Border Patrol Chief Patrol Agent Aaron Heitke said this a couple days ago. Our agents prevented these dangerous narcotics from reaching our communities. I'm proud to say that our Border Patrol agents here in San Diego sector are responsible for over 50% of all the fentanyl seized by the U.S. Border Patrol this fiscal year. Yeah, the smuggler and the drugs, they were handed over to the DEA. And by the way, no one's been able to discover who they work for. So Representative Lauren Boebert, you know who that is, right? The one with the smile. She introduced a bill last month. I want to make you aware of it because it might need some support. And the bill would classify fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. She said she hoped it would allow relevant federal agencies to better coordinate their efforts to eliminate the threat posed by this deadly substance. Who makes it? Correct, the CCP, might as well be the labs that are controlled by the Communist Chinese Communist Party. Who smuggles it into this country? The global syndicate does. That's how they get their dark money. Who launders the money for the drugs? That's right. The banks do. The banks are as addicted to the fentanyl as the people who are actually addicted to the fentanyl because they're addicted to the cash. So how does the bank launder this money? Well, they launder it through fake accounts. They do get caught for it from time to time, but nothing ever happens to them. Just ask James Comey. And in order to, in exchange for laundering the money, the bank skims 10-20% of the money. How much was this particular shipment worth? Somewhere around $3.6 million. So about 20% of that money, which is $720,000. That's what the bank gets to keep. That's the dark money. That's the off-the-books money. Now, I guarantee you that doesn't go on the books of the bank. That goes with the bankers, the officials that are making sure that this money makes its way through the bank and on to its account holders. They're the ones who keep the money. And I would think also that some of the politicians that are responsible for looking the other way, making sure this guy that drove this pickup truck, maybe the pickup truck itself, maybe the guy who bought the pickup truck, making sure that nothing happens to them. Because that's the way the system works. Senator Josh Hawley, you know who he is, right? He beat McClaskey in Missouri. Great guy. Loved Josh since he started campaigning. He asked Gary Rassicot. Now, Rassicot is the acting secretary for Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction office. Yeah, there's actually an office like that in the DHS. So he asked him about the proposal at a Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs hearing yesterday. And what do you think he said? What do you think Rassicot said? You think he was concerned about the 51 million Americans that could have been killed by this drug if it was dropped in the water supply or sprinkled over L.A. from a small plane or some explosive device blown up in a park or a football game or a NASCAR race? You think he was concerned about any of those people? No. Rassicot urged caution yesterday when asked about a GOP proposal to classify fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction perpetrated on this country by the Communist Chinese Party. Here's what he said. I'll quote, "Any declaration of fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, I think you have to carefully consider that, because there are legitimate medical uses for fentanyl." Yeah, that's what he said at the hearing. Not for this fentanyl, sir. In regards to illicit fentanyl, I think you have to proceed with caution there as well, because I think that you want to avoid, what I think you want to avoid is creating overlapping jurisdictions or even diverting limited weapons of mass destruction resources into a counter-narcotics arena. He was worried about his budget. Fentanyl, by the way, can be up to 50 times stronger than heroin. And by the way, they can lace anything with it. They can lace marijuana with it. They can lace CBD with it. They can lace any other cocaine or crack or any of this they can lace with fentanyl. It makes it 100 times stronger than morphine. This is according to the CDC. It is often mixed with other drugs, of course, heroin, cocaine, meth. It's made into pills that resemble other prescription opioids. You take it, you're dead. And by the way, it happens every single day. 150 people die every single day from these drugs. Every single day. China has long been the primary source of this illegal fentanyl in the U.S. Under international pressure, Beijing banned the production and sale of fentanyl in 2019. You see how well that is working. Josh Hawley pressed Rassicot at the hearing about the risk of terrorists misusing fentanyl. What did he do? I quote, back to this possibility of terrorists of foreign nations weaponizing fentanyl. Can you give me your assessment of it? Is that likely? What are the concerns around that? Senator Hawley asked. Here's what Rassicot said. I would be happy to give you that assessment, but I think it would be more appropriately done in a different forum, and I'd like to follow up with you on that. Close quote. You've heard the term. I'll circle back on that. You've heard that, right? That's what Rassicot did. Rassicot didn't want to explain in the hearing. He didn't want the cameras running. He didn't want you, the people, to really know what the threat is. Let me give it to you straight. The Communist Chinese Party makes fentanyl. They didn't ban it. They are flooding our southern border with it. It's kept vulnerable by direct cooperation by Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals. They are all involved. It is a clear and present danger to the American people, to you and to me, and to my kids and my grandkids. It is treason to aid and abet the enemy of the American people to distribute a weapon inside this country. And action must be taken immediately to serve justice on these people. When I say that war is justice denied, now you know what I mean. The deliberate exposure of the residents of America to these weapons of mass destruction, which are in the form of chemical warfare agents, is treason. It can be prevented by finishing Trump's border wall. Let me pay attention to the chat room. It's been flying while I've been talking here. Yeah, that's right. 55,000 people a year. That is exactly right. Well, Liberty Lady, let me be clear about this. She's saying blame the Chinese. Fentanyl is one of their weapons they are killing us with. Too broad, okay? The CCP does have an enemy, and the enemy is way bigger than the U.S. It is the Chinese people. So when you say Chinese, make sure you finish it off. Chinese Communist Party. It is the CCP, not the Chinese people. Even the Chinese people that are making these drugs to be distributed inside the United States, and by the way, Western Europe as well, they're not doing it voluntarily. I guarantee they're not making as much money as the guy in the black pickup truck was going to make. Yeah. So that's the only caution that I have with that. What is that? Dini Live always comes up with clever things. Let's see here. Instead of giving the jab, pass out naloxone to everybody in the country. Delivered by post office or free pickups at pharmacies. I'm not familiar with what naloxone is. Maybe you can explain to me what that is. Is that a cure for COVID? I prefer ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. I think it's cheap. It's readily available if you listen to this program. Not readily available to everyone else out there in this country. But we can only share that knowledge by word of mouth. We can't advertise it here on this program because YouTube is still with us. And YouTube wants everybody to get jabbed. What is it? Narcan? Oh, I see. Narcan reverses opioids. Oh, I see. Okay. It combats overdoses. Well, that makes sense to me. If you're going to, but how quick does it work? I mean, I have read police reports of them going in and finding these places that are housing these drugs, these fentanyl, and the dogs and the cops all die because they're not wearing respirators and gloves and all that, proper personal protective equipment. How quick does this stuff work? Because, fentanyl will kill you in minutes. It's over. You're unconscious and your heart stops. Oh, EMS carries it very fast. It's not too late. Ah, very good. By the way, that's ITSOT 1984. I'm sorry, the names are jammed together, so I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. Oh, and Ukrainian labs are participating. Interesting. I was not aware of that. I thought all this was coming from China. And Comfortably Numb says it works rapidly. It's used in ERs all the time. Okay, that's, I don't know, can you get high on this stuff? Maybe it would be advisable to make it available at every CVS so people can stock it and have it with you. Good to have you here, Big D 1955. The program's not complete without you. Glad you're here. All right, we got just a few minutes left in this segment, and then we will take a very short break, 3 or 4 minutes, and let the folks down at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported network in America, possibly in the world, do their identification and advertisements. If you're thinking about giving money to a podcast, by the way, I applaud you because all these guys, they work their butts off. They don't have, regular jobs, and this is it. This is their living. I don't need the money. Please, you can send me money. I'm going to put it to good use. It's wonderful. I appreciate just you being in the chat room. But if you're going to give money, really in the mood, go to freedomslips.com. And what I would do is become a Patreon of theirs. Okay? Sign up. give $2, $3, $4 a month. You're not going to miss it. They're already taking that out of your check anyway, by the way, and giving it to NPR. So you might as well tax yourself. And if 100,000 of you that are listening to this program over the next few days went to freedomslips.com, signed up as a Patreon, and gave $4 or $5 a month, you'd never miss it. But we could change the world. We're already in the top 10 networks on TalkStream Live, which includes Blaze TV and Fox Nation, all these podcasters, all these digital broadcasts go out through TalkStream Live, and TalkStream Live ranks them. And Revolution Radio is right up there in the top 10. Imagine what we could do if we were in the top 3 or 4. The only way to get there is with your help. So that's my ad to you. All right, let's. What other thing can I bring up in the next 2 minutes before we go into this piece about the Department of Education? Because I think it's about time. It's about time, don't you think? I mean, Jimmy Carter started it, and it's run its course, and it's about time for it to end. We're ready for America to take back our education system. We'll talk about that right after the break, so don't leave us, because we're going to get into better stuff. Huh? Oh, you just got here. Okay, VRED 954 says, just got here. Hello, Brooks, and all in the chat. By the way, to be part of the chat, it's free. It don't cost nothing. And you can do any or all of them, except for Rumble and Rockfin. For some reason, they don't have their chats integrated with Restream. I wish they did. It would be wonderful. We'd love to see the wonderful chats from the people in Rumble. Rumble's a great service. They're growing by leaps and bounds. So if you know anybody that works for Rumble, call them up and say, hey, why don't you integrate your chat? It would be great if the world could see your chats. Don't you think it'd be great? But we see everybody else's. We see D-Lives and YouTubes and Twitches and all that here. And so that's who I'm reading. That's what you're seeing up there on the screen. All right. When we come back from the break, we'll go through this one piece, and then we're probably going to have to let YouTube go, because we're going to get into some information that the YouTube police, they don't like. And you know that Google routinely violates our civil rights, our constitutional civil rights here, so we're not going to let that happen. Some of my colleagues, they just come on, they announce on YouTube, and then they're gone. They go immediately to Rumble. At least I give you some content on YouTube, because we love our YouTube subscribers. You know how many years it took us to build up to 20,000? A long time. And believe me, they cut us back on a regular basis. So we appreciate you. We love you so much. We want you to access the program. But remember, go in the description right down there below and move over to one of these better free speech platforms, because we're not going to do business with YouTube. We're going to do business with the company that buys YouTube out. Okay? Yeah. We're going to do business with their replacement, because free speech will prevail. Unlike what little Peter Buttcrack said this week, that, you should just give up your internal combustion engine. That's so status quo. Why don't you just buy an electric vehicle? Yeah. All right. Little Peter Buttcrack. We'll talk about him a little bit too after the break. Don't go away. More coming up right after this.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Are you interested in the paranormal, murder mystery, real natural law? Do you enjoy interviews with amazing guests? Then join Crypt Rick every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Revolution Radio. Studio A, freedomslips.com. Crypt Rick's Ivan thinking. Welcome to the Crypt.
Join me at Revolution Radio, Studio B, at 11 a.m. on Saturday for Free Association, when we take a look at philosophy, spirituality, psychology, social issues, and geopolitics. It's every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Studio B at freedomslips.com.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
All right. I suppose I could have taken my sip during the break, but I didn't. All right. I've been running the book ads, by the way, on video if you're watching. And today I just published my 12th book. It is a book of poetry. I've been posting the poems on my website, but I monitor the traffic on the website, and not many people do visit my poetry page because I don't know, people just don't go looking for poetry if they're coming to visit Brooks Agnew. So I decided to assemble all the poetry, format them, and put them in one book. And I'll put it on Amazon, and I'm going to sell it for a couple different prices. The Kindle version will be cheap, about $5, something like that. The paperback's going to be a little more expensive than that, but not much. These poems, I think, really will be valuable in the audio version. So if you buy the Kindle or the paperback, I'm going to give you the audio version just as soon as I finish mixing it. But then I'm going to sell the audiobook by itself on my website in my new web store, which we're working on our new web store. The store I have is okay. I built it. It works okay. But we're going to build a new Shopify store. I really liked Shopify when I did it before. I built it. I put it up. It worked really great. People could select quantities and they could build a shopping cart, which was kind of cool. They didn't have to make separate transactions for each item like they do now. But Shopify immediately stole $1,500 from me and shut my store down for life. So I've hired someone to build me another one, more clandestine. I'm using a different email address. They're never going to associate it with me. And we're going to launch it separately. So that's what we're going to use for our social media marketing campaigns. Shopify tends to work better with the social medias than my store does. When you get to my store, you got to be patient and make several clicks to make your purchase. And that's one thing nice about Shopify is it's made for shopping. But people at Shopify hate patriots, and so they routinely violate our constitutional rights by not allowing us to do commerce. So I've hired someone who's good at it, and I'm paying them good money, and they're putting the Shopify store together for me. And that's where the audiobook will be available. And it'll also be available on my website for my good people. But a lot of people don't read poetry, and if they do, they have to really concentrate because it's compressed language. But if I read it to you, you'll probably get it, right? You would never read Charge of the Light Brigade, right? But you would listen to it, right? So anyway, hopefully that will get out there and we will affect some hearts that way. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Department of Education. A lot of people don't know what it's there for, why it exists. But ever since Jimmy Giveaway Panama Canal Carter formed it, the federal government has been seeking to destroy freedom in this country. Yes, I said it. Freedom, according to Thomas Jefferson, begins with the education system. Once you remove freedom of education, you remove freedom from the nation. And we are the last hope for freedom in the world. Once it goes away in this country, it will never come back. The global syndicate will have their world back just the way they had it before the founding fathers formed America. And they have been federalizing the money in education and the curricula ever since Carter formed the department. I often say we don't judge people. We don't do it on this program. I don't recommend you doing it personally. But you are given every right to be a fruit inspector. Oh yes, by their fruits you shall know them. Well, at least 181 K-12 educators, including 4 principals, have recently been arrested on child sex-related crimes in the U.S. That's just in the first few months of this year, by the way. And it ranges from child porn to actually raping students. Any analysis that's conducted, you're going to see this. Week by week, features arrests of principals, teachers, substitute teachers, and teachers' aides on child sex-related crimes in school districts from coast to coast, border to border. And these arrests that weren't publicized were not counted in the analysis, meaning the true number is way, way higher. The analysis found that at least 181 have been arrested between January 1st and June 30th, which works out to exactly an arrest per day, every single day. And it's much higher than that because this study only takes into consideration the arrests that were publicized. Some are not. At least 140 of these arrests, or about 77% of them, involved alleged crimes against students. Men also made up the vast majority, 78%, but that means 22% of them were women. And of the 22%, 80%, by the way, not involved in child porn, involved in child rape. Yeah, that's crazy, don't you know? Roger Weaver Freed, the 34-year-old former principal at Williamsport Area High School in Pennsylvania, was arrested in June. He was charged with sexual contact with a student, corruption of a minor, furnishing liquor to a minor, sexual assault, and aggravated indecent assault without consent. Freed is also accused of having a years-long sexual relationship with a male student. Shannon Hall, 31-year-old former teacher at Jamaica Gateway at the Sciences High School in New York City, also arrested in June, charged with forcible touching, endangering the welfare of a child, and aggravated harassment. Hale is accused of grabbing a 14-year-old female student, she's female, grabbing her breasts inside his classroom, of sending text to a 16-year-old student that said he wanted to have sex with her and threatened to kill her if she told anyone. Norman Merrill, a 45-year-old former teacher at Green Mountain Union High School in Vermont, was arrested in May and charged with production of child sexual abuse material and possession of child sexual abuse material. Merrill is accused of secretly videoing female students walking past him at school and of producing videos showing nude children. Anessa Page Gower, a 35-year-old former biology teacher at Making Waves Academy in Richmond, California, was charged with not 1, not 2, not 10, not 20, but 29 counts of child molestation. Yeah, 35-year-old female. Gower is accused of sexually abusing 7 students between 2021 and 2022 when she was a teacher at Making Waves, with allegations including forcible sodomy of minors and sharing sexually graphic photos over online platforms. Not too bright. John Doty, 35-year-old former biology teacher at Career Academy South Bend in Indiana, charged with 2 counts of rape, 1 count of attempted rape, and 6 counts of child seduction on February 9th. Doty's accused of repeatedly raping a 16-year-old female student and threatening to kill her. He is scheduled to stand trial in January of 2023. The analysis comes after the U.S. Department of Education released a report last month titled A Study of State Policies to Prohibit Aiding and Abetting Sexual Misconduct in Schools. Really? Policies, aiding and abetting. Which analyze state policies prohibiting passing the trash or allowing suspended sexual abusers to quietly leave their jobs to possibly offend again in a different school system. It also happens in police departments, by the way. A bipartisan provision of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which is called ESSA, which was originally proposed by Republican Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, requires all states receiving federal education funding to enact laws prohibiting the practice of passing the trash. The Education Department's report, however, found that laws against the practice are varied from state to state, and that while all states require prospective employers to conduct criminal background checks on educators, and most states, 46 of them, by the way, require fingerprinting, only 19 states require employers to request information from an applicant's current or former employers. It's kind of an iffy thing here. I have run several plants and thus have had several human resource departments. I have hired lots and lots of people, thousands of people, and I can tell you that background checks are tricky. There's a lot of liability when you call up a former employer. The only thing that they can confirm or deny is, yes, this person worked here between this period, and that's it. They can be sued into oblivion if they say, yeah, that person worked here and they were late every other day. Yeah, that person worked here and he threatened another worker, or he was fired for fighting, or we caught him, stealing copier paper. If you say anything like that, your company can be sued by that person seeking that job. I'm serious. That's why human resource departments have to be very careful what questions they ask. Here's a question I coach my HR people to ask when they're doing background checks and they're calling former employers. They're going to say, yes, this person worked here between this date and that date. They know the rules. But you can ask this question. If you were given the opportunity today to hire this person back, would you, yes or no? If they say no, that is not a violation of that person's privacy, but it tells the prospective employer everything they need to know. If that former employer would not hire that employee back, even with their improved skill levels, having already worked there, then why should we? I'm just saying, these are questions that we have to ask because, we have a pretty high turnover rate, even in the factories that I consult with. Most factories have between a 60 and 80%. I've seen it as high as 80% turnover rates. These are people that will come to work. They'll work 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then they'll quit and they'll go somewhere else. And, this is the Great Resignation, Earth Explorers. There are so many jobs out there. People will quit a job and hire someone else for a quarter. For 25 cents on the hour, they will leave you. I'm serious. And if your job, your place has anything to complain about, I'm standing up too much, the temperature's too hot, it's too far of a walk from the parking lot, it's too far away from my home, it's second shift instead of first shift, they're going to leave you. And they're going to go someplace else because there are a lot of jobs. Not a lot of jobs. There are a hell of a lot of jobs out there available. So unless you're willing to pay obscene amounts more than anybody else, and even then, I have seen people walk out the door for $2 an hour less working somewhere else. They don't think things through. Okay, I'm going to be with my friends. I'm going to be closer to the house. I get off at 3:30 instead of 4. You don't know what goes through people's minds. The point is these companies do what they do. They have their shifts. They have their work instructions. They have their onboarding procedures, whatever. They're not going to change those in significant ways to accommodate workforces. And they pay the price because of it. We pay the price in high turnover. So it makes my job important because what I do is I create, test fixtures and robotic assisting and even robotic replacements for employees so that employee A, B, C, and 6B all can do the job the same. My skill is taking the craft out of the job. I put the craft into the equipment, into the test equipment, into the go, no-go, shall we call it, process, so that the craft becomes a process. Okay, this is what companies need. They need to have a process. McDonald's has a process. They don't use robots yet, but I guarantee if you get a Big Mac made in L.A. and a Big Mac made in Philadelphia, they're identical because their process is so well controlled. Their documentation is so good and their training is so good that the Big Mac is made exactly the same. It just is. And by the way, even if you go to London, it's made the same. The only way to get it more perfect would be to go to a robotic hamburger maker. And that's coming. That's coming. I digressed a little bit, but I'm getting back to the subject because we're talking about the Department of Education here and how they're hamstringed with being able to check the background of teachers or staff or administrators that are around kids. So this is what Toomey said. He pressured the Department of Education to release its report for a long time, and they finally gave it up under duress. And they didn't want to, and this is the problem. He said, while I appreciate that the Department of Education has finally fulfilled its obligation to investigate whether states have implemented policies, laws, or regulations to stop the heinous practice of passing the trash, I am deeply concerned with these findings. Any educator who engaged in sexual misconduct with a child should be forbidden from ever teaching in a classroom ever again. Yet too many states do not have policies to ensure that is the case. Releasing this report, by the way, under extreme duress because they didn't want to, releasing this report is only the first step. The department either must hold the states accountable and use tools at its disposal to enforce the law, or it needs to go away. Christopher Rufo, who's a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, called for a new national study on the child sex abuse in schools. It's been going on a long time. This is a scandal that the political left is doing everything in its power to suppress. They want sexual assaults to happen in class, and they want the innocents to be removed. He said, the basic fact is incontrovertible. Every day a public school teacher is arrested. Every single day. Or they're convicted of child sex abuse. And yet the teachers' unions, the public school bureaucracies, and the far left-wing media pretend that the abuse is not happening. And they viciously attack families who raise concerns about their kids. It's time to take this problem very seriously. He said, I call on Congress to appropriate $25 million for a national study on child sex abuse in public schools so victims can finally get justice and parents can have greater confidence that schools will be safe for their children. I have a better one. I have a much better one, Mr. Rufo and Senator Toomey. I think we should abolish the Department of Education. Let's just abolish it. No more federal control of schools. Let the states control their schools. And then let the states hire parent advocate teams who audit schools. Every single school should have a parent audit team. And the parent audit teams, I'm not talking about grade inflation here. I'm not, let's give everybody an A. No. These parent audit teams will audit the schools on their effectiveness. is my kid graduating your school able to read? Did you know only 25% of males in the United States age 18 qualify to be accepted in the armed services? 25%. That's 1 out of 4. You know why they don't qualify? Well, some of the reasons are that they're out of shape, or that they have comorbidities, or they have tattoos on their face. But the biggest reason is they can't read. They can't read and do basic math. They can't pass the basic AFES exam. The AFES is the Armed Forces aptitude test that you take. And you have to pass, basic high school reading, basic high school math. Of course, if you excel at those things, you could be placed in higher skill jobs, and not have to be ferreted out during basic training, because they continue to test you during basic training. But the reason is because kids are stupid. They don't have the aptitude to qualify for the armed services. And I'll tell you something, if they don't qualify for the armed services, they're probably not going to qualify to work in our plant. You have to be able to read. You've got to be able to read a basic work instruction. You've got to be able to tell time and count money and, these basic things. And they can't do it. Why can't they do it? Because the Federal Department of Education has been dedicated, ever since Jimmy Giveaway Panama Canal Carter formed it, to dumbing down the students, to creating a federal workforce of slaves. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. And calling on Congress to appropriate $25 million for a national study. Why don't you stick that $25 million up your ass? Because that's going to get nothing. That's going to get nothing. Pounding on the podium and demanding $25 million from Congress for a study is stupid. It's stupid. It's ridiculously stupid. If you wanted to appropriate money, you should appropriate money to form parent audit councils. Yes, and it doesn't cost a lot of money because parents will do it for free. Parents will do it for free. You know why I was involved with the education system in my county in eastern Tennessee? Because I had a kid in every school in the county. Yeah, I had a kid in primary school, in middle school, and in high school. I had a kid in every school. And I had a vested interest in whether the school was teaching my kids properly or not. Found out that they weren't. I will say that Tennessee schools are far superior to North Carolina schools, and you can see it on the ranking as well. I think Tennessee ranks 11 in the country, and North Carolina ranks like 38th in the country for K through 12. Now, they have great colleges, I will say that, great colleges. But the kids that are going to those colleges went to high schools in other states. I'm just saying. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Biden sanctions. Let me take a look at my YouTube. I've been gentle. Man, we have a lot of people listening on YouTube. All right, I'm not going to cancel YouTube tonight. I'm going to keep YouTube around. I will couch my words and pray that the YouTube police don't get me. The Biden sanctions are backfiring. We've been talking about this for a while from several different aspects, but I want to bring a new one to you tonight because it relates to your life. And you don't think it does, but it does. Canada was sent a turbine from Russia to be fixed. The turbine goes into the Nord Stream gas pipeline to Germany. Russians sent it by plane to Canada for it to be fixed, upgraded, bearings replaced, because if they don't, the turbine's going to come flying to pieces and then you're really going to have problems. So the return of the turbine from Canada to Russia is the question. Because it goes to the Portovaya compressor station, which has been the focus for the last month since Russian energy producer Gazprom reduced gas supplies to Germany. And this is a critical pumping station for the pipeline. Without this equipment, Germany runs dry in about 10 days from now. This is a big deal. It's a big deal because ever since Operation Z was commenced on February 24th to stop the Pan-European Army's Azov Battalion from invading Crimea, Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals have been sanctioning Russia. It is absolutely clear to the world that the G7 was planning on attacking Crimea and seizing control of the rich oil and gas properties in that region. Russia has the support of 111 countries around the world, all sided against the 7 countries trying to use force to take what they want. Russia has been completely successful in stopping the invasion of Crimea. Many people are now wondering why Putin waited 8 years to make this military move. The violent overthrow of Ukraine in 2014 went largely unanswered even after the attempted assassination of its president by Victoria Nuland and John McCain using U.S. Army snipers. Let's see, fix one thing here for the newsletter. The Nord Stream 1 is supposed to be completely repaired by July 21st. That's tomorrow. That's why I'm bringing this up tonight. However, there are fears that Russia could extend the work period, throwing plans to fill European gas storage for the winter into disarray and heightening a crisis that has prompted emergency measures from governments and painfully high bills for consumers. So Canada doesn't want to send the turbine back because they say it violates the sanctions. Okay, we did the work. There are a couple doubts here. One is that Canada could sabotage the turbine. That is to say, program it somehow to give them the ability to, shut off the turbine at will or to make it somehow not operate at peak efficiency. And then there is why they would do this. Because do you really think that Trudeau really cares about the sanctions that much? Nobody really does. But you have to understand, Canada has a lot of oil and gas, a lot. In fact, they're one of the world's largest producers of it. They have very rich properties up there. And unlike the United States, all of that property, every single well is owned by Canada. Yeah, there are no private oil and gas producers in Canada. It's all owned by the state. I'm thinking that maybe Canada is plotting to subsidize Germany by sending them oil and gas and not return the turbine to Russia. This would be a very bad decision. Germany's Siemens Energy is making the turbine repairs, and then they're going to send the repaired units to Russia to be reinstalled if there are no problems with logistics and customs. Gazprom said Saturday it expected Siemens to meet its obligations in full when servicing gas turbine needs for the reliable operation of the Nord Stream and energy shipments to Europe. Germany's economy ministry said a couple days ago it could not provide details of the turbine's whereabouts. But a spokesperson for the ministry said that the turbine was a replacement part that was meant to be used only from September, meaning its absence could not be the real reason for the fall off in gas flows prior to the maintenance. Kremlin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov redirected questions to Gazprom. Gazprom and the Russian energy ministry did not respond to questions for comment. Ukraine's President Zelensky said he had told Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Sunday that Ukrainians could never accept Canada's decision to return the turbine, saying the move violated sanctions. Now, Zelensky didn't say that. He was told to say that. Zelensky's just an actor. He doesn't think for himself. He does what he is told. President Volodymyr Zelensky said he had told Prime Minister Justin Trudeau Sunday that Ukrainians would never accept Canada's decision to return a gas turbine intended for a Russian pipeline because it would encourage more sanctions violations. He said in his nightly video address that he has talked to Trudeau earlier and thanked him for his support. However, I stressed separately that Ukrainians will never accept this. Trudeau said today that it was a very difficult decision to grant an exemption from sanctions imposed on Russia for the return of the repaired turbine needed for the Nord Stream 1 gas pipeline. That was today. But Zelensky echoed earlier remarks by other Ukrainian officials, said Russia was engaging in blackmail with gas. If there's one violation now, it's only a matter of time before there will be others. Let me tell you, the audacity of demanding the Russian gas and oil while forbidding Russia from making the repairs to the pipeline clearly reveals the intentions of the pan-European army. The G7 intended all along to seize the pipeline, either by force or through financial subterfuge. Putin warned them over 8 years not to encroach on the land and not to attempt a debt trap against the nation of Ukraine or Crimea. Russia loaned Ukraine the money to develop the petroleum reserves, which caused the American State Department to violently overthrow the government of Ukraine in 2014. The Azov Battalion assembled its forces over a period of 8 years, along with reinforcements, ammunition, and weapons in Donbass for the invasion of Crimea on March 23rd. They routinely shelled and machine-gunned ethnic Russians in the Donbass, resulting in more than 14,000 civilian deaths over the 8 years. Putin launched Operation Z on February 24th to stop the invasion and slaughter of Crimea. The first actions of the Z force was to evacuate the children being held in orphanages, seize control of the bioweapons and nuclear plants, and the next order of business was to wipe out the Nazis and their ability to conduct war, which has nearly been completed. It has been in Donbass. With the war almost over, the G7 is now hinting they are so desperate they may resort to nuclear weapons. The Russians launched on schedule the Belgorod nuclear submarine, which can carry the nuclear drone torpedo. I explained this to you on Sunday, but it bears re-explaining because nobody else is doing this. If anybody else is explaining this about the drone torpedo, my hat's off to them, because this is a very, very dangerous game changer. The K-329 Belgorod is a modified design of the Oscar II class Russian nuclear submarine. It was originally laid down in July of 1992 as Project 949A, which is a cruise missile submarine, but was later designated and redesigned as a partly built hull was used to be reconfigured as a special operations vessel to operate unmanned underwater vehicles. Now, this is a very important development. You need to pay close attention to this because you are not going to hear about this from the fake stream news. The K-329 Belgorod, along with the Status 6 Oceanic Multipurpose System. This is a very complex system. Only the Russians have it. It was one of the last weapons systems presented by Russian President Vladimir Putin during his annual speech on March 1st in 2018. And it was recently successfully tested at sea. And it was commissioned this week by the Russian Navy. The Belgorod will reportedly be the first in a series of submarines to utilize the Status 6 Oceanic Multipurpose System. As I reported to you last week, the Poseidon-type remotely operated underwater vehicle that's nuclear-powered and carries a 100 megaton warhead. That's huge. It has a 10,000 kilometer range. It can dive to depths of 1,000 meters. That's 3,000 feet. And it is designed to deliver a nuclear warhead for the destruction of coastal infrastructure as a nuclear retaliation strike option. It's not a first strike. It is a retaliatory strike. Why? Because the Belgorod can carry 6 of these Poseidon torpedoes at once. And this nuclear tsunami weapon can wipe off the map any coastal city. London, Seattle, New York, Virginia, any coastal city, and leave behind a nuclear wasteland of mud and sand. Once the weapon is launched, by the way, it's underwater, it's autonomous, it cannot be stopped, and it is virtually undetectable. This weapon was developed to end nuclear war by creating the ultimate counterstrike. It's out there now. It's underwater right now. And if it receives orders to deliver a weapon, can't be stopped. Cannot be stopped. All right, let's talk a little bit about the fourth horseman. You remember the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? The fourth horseman was green. Gotabaya Rajapaksa's final action. By the way, if you don't know him, that's Sri Lanka's president. His last action last week was to cling to power just long enough so he could find a country that would accept him in exile. In the dead of the night, a Sri Lankan military transport took him, his wife, and 2 bodyguards to the Maldives, whence he departed for Singapore, ending the Rajapaksa clan's decades-long grip on power and offering some slim hope that a new government might steer a way through the sad morass that is the Sri Lankan economy. The question everyone wants to know, and I'm going to provide you tonight, how did it get that way? How did Sri Lanka get so messed up? Well, first, it fell to a debt trap that was set up by the transatlantic banks. It soon became one of the most highly indebted of emerging market nations. Sri Lanka saw its tourist industry first devastated by a scorched earth final military campaign against Tamil Tiger rebels that led to credible reports of widespread rape and abuse. And then, within a decade, the emergence of the COVID virus essentially finished off the tourism on the island. Yet, the president also was not immune to the baubles that often catch the eye of autocrats with unchecked power, and that is the way of the creditors. They tempt the leader with unbelievable wealth. Using loans from China, and Rajapaksa went on a vanity spree, building a seaport, a convention center, a performing arts center, by the way, all named after himself. And as the final jewel of his narcissistic crown, Rajapaksa International Airport, the kind of boondoggle for which the word boondoggle was invented in the first place, it was built so deep in the middle of freaking nowhere, it might as well have been situated in the middle of the ocean. It drew so little traffic that budget airlines and eventually flagship carrier Sri Lankan Airlines declined to use it. One government report said the airport had monthly revenues of $125. In May, Sri Lanka, as predicted, defaulted on its foreign debt. But the final nail in the coffin came when Rajapaksa impetuously decided in April of 2021, you remember when that was, right? You remember? To ban synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. The country, he declared, would become organic. Sri Lanka was going green. Going green is a pillar of the environmental, social, and governance movement, which aims to include these ESG goals in evaluating the investment worthiness of companies and countries beyond mere profit and loss. How do you think Sri Lanka got the loans? Do you think the bank officer looked at the plans and said, wow, this is a nice airport, really nice. Where are you putting it? You're putting the airport there? Who the hell wants to fly there? There's no roads to there. There are no hotels there. There's no beach there. Why are you putting the airport there? No, the bank never asked those questions. Why? Because they met all the ESG requirements. And within weeks of the president's dictate, guess what happened? Rice production went down 20%. Scarcity of rice sent the food prices through the roof. Farmers who either could not or would not make the green transition let roughly 1/3 of the country's farmland lie in fallow. They didn't plant. By any standard, Rajapaksa's decision was a complete disaster, same as it is in this country. This ESG standards create poverty like small pebbles triggering an avalanche. ESG standards are driven by a left-wing vision that actively ignores the disastrous consequences it creates. There's a saying that if you are a business that goes woke, you will soon be broke. So for decades, it was kind of a fear that when America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. America's global impact was such that nations around the world felt a ripple effect from whatever bumps in the road the U.S. economy encountered. So if the Trump economy was booming and roaring and everybody was working, what do you think the world economy was doing? It was doing exactly the same thing. It was roaring right along with us. And every single country was having pride in its own country, and it was beginning to prosper. But when Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals came in February of 2021, the disaster began almost immediately. It is a cautionary tale, and in one in which a number of indebted emerging market nations will have to deal. These various ripple effects from whatever happens here happens there, but amplified. Countries including, Laos, Lebanon, Pakistan, Zambia. They're believed to not have enough foreign currency reserves to last more than 2 or 3 months. So Sri Lanka's pending delicate dance with the International Monetary Fund to secure loans and bridge funding is likely to plot out the pitfalls of trying to resolve similar crises as it is to provide a roadmap out of the troubles. If Sri Lanka falls victim to the IMF debt trap at another level, the island may fall to cannibalism. No one is going to go there. Everything is going to be stripped to the bone, and a once emerging country is going to be plunged back into third world status. All these nations, from Vietnam on, are watching what's happening in Sri Lanka. They're all in debt to their earlobes. ESG could be the internet bubble of the decade. The ESG movement effectively shames institutions into a kind of hollow virtual signaling. Sri Lanka, they didn't have the green technology to carry out Rajapaksa's dictate. Indeed, much of the technology needed It doesn't even exist yet. They're only talking about it. So when they're trying to shame you into driving an electric vehicle, don't you buy it. Because the electric vehicle that's capable of taking you and your family where you need to go doesn't exist yet. The technology's not there. You know why it's not there? Because the companies that have it, like mine, don't have access to capital. We don't have access to capital, so you're not going to get that technology in your driveway. ESG is essentially a cover for poor performance. With the passage of time, this green horseman of the apocalypse is going to be seen as a giant sham. It's all going to come crashing down. All right, let's see. Do I have enough time to cover this? There's a new war on terror brewing. Much like it's George W. Bush all over again, standing on a pile of rubble. Unlike its previous iteration, however, this new war on terror is going to not be fought in Afghanistan. It's going to be fought in your town. Its enemy is not the Islamic State. Nope. The enemy is you. The enemy is the American middle class. And in order to further this domestic war, politicians and federal bureaucrats have spread false and exaggerated claims regarding the J6 event. They're painting it as some sort of armed terrorist insurrection, which it was not. It was a celebration. It was peaceful. It was wonderful. It was inspirational. It was patriotic. While inflated rhetoric is often the norm within the realm of government and politics, this goes beyond the pale. This specific instance is a calculated act with a specific goal. It is a classic example of never let a crisis go to waste. Consequently, you're at risk. You're at risk. And this is what they're saying. It's a riot. You know, it was definitely a tiny group of people who may have had some insurrectionist ideas, but they didn't bring guns, you know? I mean, how intense of an insurrection are you going to have if you don't bring anything beyond bear spray? Nevertheless, Democrat politicians and left-leaning media outlets, they continue every single day to forward a number of false claims about exaggerations to support this insurrection narrative. They don't want to talk about their insurrection that happened in November of 2020. Let's see here. I don't want to cover that. We only have just a few minutes left. But it appears that this false insurrection narrative is giving federal agencies authority that would otherwise be seen as an infringement on constitutional rights. They have arrested pretty much anybody who took a selfie in the Capitol for federal crimes. They're overcharging everything. They're keeping people in solitary confinement, no bail, and basically abusing state power in a very scary way. The federal crackdown on those present January 6th has indeed been extensive. I think that they're going to be in jail for about 2 more months. And then Republicans are going to win the elections, and then these prisoners are going to be tomorrow's leaders. That's also could be a problem. During the Bush administration, the original war on terror saw the state gain unprecedented new powers. The Patriot Act, the ability to monitor your phone conversations, searching everything you have before you get on an airplane, which I still do not like. And this was thanks largely to the 9/11 Commission, which was a little bit like the J6 Commission. It was the independent committee. It was created to recommend actions the government could take to avoid terrorist attacks. And, of course, the Patriot Act, which granted the National Security Agency the ability to spy on American citizens. It created the TSA, which is what goes violates your civil rights by scanning you every time you get on an airplane, which is ridiculous. And they've never found anything. They've never stopped anything, but they still do it. Those pushing the new domestic war on terror, taking their cues from the 9/11 Commission. Evan Hill, who's a reporter for the New York Times, confirmed as much shortly following the J6 Commission when he tweeted that a former intelligence official on PBS NewsHour was saying U.S. officials should think about a 9/11 Commission for domestic extremism. Yeah, whatever. I'm extreme, right? Retired Army General Stanley McChrystal, we've already told you about his treasonous acts. He says, I did see a similar dynamic in the evolution of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, where a whole generation of angry Arab youth with very poor prospects followed a powerful leader who promised to take them back in time to a better place. And he led them to embrace an ideology that justified their violence. And now it's happening in America. Yeah, but it's not Antifa, is it? It's not BLM, is it? No, it's patriots. McChrystal, you're a traitor, and you should be taken out of commission. You should be put in jail. Unlike the 9/11 counterpart, the J6 Commission, it isn't independent. It's very partisan. In the stated view of Democrats, J6 was not an isolated event. Instead, it was exemplary of a larger problem the U.S. faces, which is us, which is the middle class, which is the patriot, which is the person who believes in the Constitution. We're the larger problem. They're going to use the idea of that white supremacy, which is their social engineering, that their woke bugaboo. They are going to use that now as a terror threat. Sounds like the Daily News, doesn't it? And consequently, they're going to use that to push farther into the more moderate, parts of conservatism, like maybe average, ordinary, everyday flag-waving, anthem-singing Americans. The FBI's most recent hate crime numbers show that white people are underrepresented among the hate crime offenders. Really? We're underrepresented? That's like being a bank robber and having very low bounty. Anyway, while whites make up roughly 76% of the population, they make up roughly only 52% of hate crime offenders. I'm surprised it's that high. However, with the rise of critical racist theory and other social justice philosophies, the term white supremacy continues to become more vaguely defined. White people are supreme, and that makes them white supremacists. Whatever. These increasingly vague definitions also have been adopted by high-ranking military officials like Milley, who is also a traitor, and I think guilty of treason for betraying the President of the United States. In July of 2020, a Fox News report found that an Army base in Alabama had disseminated handouts to military personnel that claimed the following were all forms of covert white supremacy. You ready for this? Saying all lives matter, or saying make America great again, or MAGA, or colorblindness, or denial of white privilege, or anti-immigration policies, or American exceptionalism, or meritocracy. Yeah, claiming reverse racism, English-only initiatives. Yeah, all these are signs of forms of covert white supremacy. This is America Free Radio. My name is Brooks Agnew. I've been your host for the last 2 hours. We're here every Wednesday, every Sunday. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. It's free. We'll see you on Sunday. All right, we'll see you.
Thank you for listening to Revolution.